500 and growing.
Podcast.
Dedicated to the underdog, cause I see you. Working on your craft, getting strong, cause I see you. Ready to set it off and on, cause I see you. Correcting all that is wrong, cause I see you. Cause I see you. I see you. I see you. I see you.
Hey, my name is Jesus Azteca 500 Sanchez. I am the host of the 500 and Growing podcast. And today in the studio, we have Mike Oquendo, also known as Mikey O. Mike Oquendo is a Chicago-born, raised, proud Puerto Rican, Boricua,
Así es.
with great love for his city and the people. Mike passionately produces comedy, theater, and music events. And I've seen him host, and man, sometimes you see what's going on in the back, because I actually examine what's going on in the background, and you're just like, man, they really don't have it together. And you're out there, and I see you like manage the crowd and make sure that everything's running smoothly.
Yeah.
So I peep the back of it, right?
Yeah.
Because I like events and how they're run. So Mikey O also is responsible for, definitely giving Gwen La Roca a boost. So Gwen La Roca is a past guest of the 500 and Growing podcast of this season, maybe like 3 episodes ago, and has given a lot of people an opportunity. And every time I talk to anybody about Mikey O, when I've gone to the events, everybody has like incredible things to say about you. They always say like, yo, he's a connector, like, he'll look out for you. If you bring good energy, he's going to give you good energy. And he's like that person that kind of like, he's the puzzle maker. He makes puzzles. And, I'm really excited to hear your story. So everybody, please give a digital round of applause for Mikey O.
Woo! Yeah. Man. Well, thank you for that intro, man. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah.
Super excited to be here. We had this conversation a while back, and I'm glad I'm here. I think when we spoke initially, I was not thinking that I would be a guest, but I'm excited that I'm here. And again, thank you.
Yeah, man. I mean, you fit the bill. Like we were talking earlier, like the reason why we made this show was to kind of show the alternative, right? Like there are people who stand on the edge of things, and they hesitate to jump and to like really pursue their dream.
Yeah.
It's just like, they're just like, it's safer. I'm here. Like, I don't know. I have health insurance. I have this. I have that. And it's just like, there are people who took that dive and like really figured out how they were going to do it. And so there's a admiration that I have for people who have taken that leap. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, we'll get right into it,
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you grow up, and what did it smell like? And, did it smell like pasteles?
Yeah, pasteles y alcapurria, and it smelled like sorullos, and it smelled like arroz con gandula and lechon. That was my upbringing. I grew up in the city of Chicago. Uh-huh. I was born here. My family lived at 1900 North Sheffield, which is Lincoln Park. From there, we moved over to 3406 North Halsted. Okay. Lakeview. And that's where I spent most of my life, was at that address on Halsted and Roscoe. Whenever I think about that neighborhood, I always love the fact that I grew up there, because I did not grow up being surprised by culture, and by differences in humans. I grew up with, my best friend was, Romanian, and then, with Puerto Ricans and Cubans and Panamanians and Jewish people and German people. And we were we were in this melting pot there, you know, and then, you know, not long, maybe I was 14, 15 years old when I started to see the influx of the gay community come into that area, which today, of course, that is Boys Town, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm glad I grew up there. I'm glad that when I see somebody different that acts different or that is different in culture or that is different in sexual preference, that I'm not shocked, that I'm kind of like, okay, all right, he's gay, we're good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I grew up there. My father was a bodeguero. He was a grocer.
Okay.
You know, my father came to this country, and I saw my dad's, you know, hustle his whole life, his grind his whole life. He was a guy that was just trying to make it. He was looking for the next big store and the next big opportunity. And, you know, no English. And my mom, my sister Lydia, which was the older sister, and then my sister Nancy, which is, you know, older, the middle sister, and myself, and we grew up very Puerto Rican. You know, it was. I'm going to tell you something, and the best part about that was the beauty of that continues to be that I don't know any other way.
Yeah.
Like if I open my book to invite people to my house by accident, I've got a German friend, a Jewish friend, a Greek friend, a Japanese friend, 2 gay friends, a friend in a wheelchair. You know what I'm saying to you? Just by accident.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to build that.
Yeah.
That happens because that's who's in my index on my phone, you know? And so I'm glad, and it's what I teach. It's what I teach my kids. You know, for a long time, and to this day, I don't know that I can control it as much as I used to. My kids were not allowed to do anything all Latino.
Okay.
I didn't want that. Just like I didn't want them to be in anything all white.
Okay.
I was that person that would look up the diversity makeup in every scenario, and they were just not allowed. You know what I mean? I would not let them do something all Latino.
Yeah, like siloed.
Yeah, because that's not the world, and I did not want them to then go out into the world, and that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, I've heard of kids, you know, and by the way, you know, I just feel like eventually they'll figure that out, right? They'll figure that out. But the beauty in diversity, the beauty in having more than one culture or more than one color in a room is inexplicable. You know, it's like, you know, it's the value in that is huge. I'm glad I grew up that way for that reason, you know?
Yeah, what was the relationship like with your parents and with your family when you were growing up?
Yeah,
like little Mike. What was little Mike like?
Yeah, so I was a pain in the ass. You know, my favorite thing to tell people is I spent my entire life in the principal's office. I didn't go to school. I went to the principal's office. You know what I mean?
So you were the teacher's like incredible student.
I was that. Yeah, man. I was always in trouble. I was always, you know, they couldn't figure it out. Well, I remember as clear as day, being on the second floor, and I remember this. I remember the teacher telling my mom, I don't know, I can't figure this guy out.
Yeah.
You know, he's incredibly intelligent and he's an all-A student, but he won't sit down.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying to you? And back then they didn't have ADHD testing. Yeah. They didn't have any of that. You know, you were social adjustment. What was it called? It was you went to the social adjustment classroom.
Yeah. Or you got paddled.
You got paddled, right. Well, you know, that double paddled because, you know, your Puerto Rican mom would say, cuando llegues a la casa vas a ver, deja que llegue tu papá, right? Yep. So, and then I had a big sister that was on my ass too. So you
got triple
ass whooping, right? because my parents would whoop my ass and then they would whoop her ass because she was supposed to be watching me. Yeah. And the reason I'm behaving this way was because
because she was gonna get it too. She was like, "Yo, come on, man, you making me look bad."
Yeah. So, So I mean, you know, I was always looking, you know, for the humor in things. I thought everything was funny. Mm-hmm. I thought everything was a joke. I didn't take anything that serious. I mean, you know, my entire, you know, life was spent watching, you know, the Flintstones, Magilla Gorilla. I'm going way back, okay. you know, the Flintstones and Magilla Gorilla, and then Hogan's Heroes and Sanford and Son and Chico and the Man, and you know, I Love Lucy. That's kind of like, you know, that's kind of like where I got my school from, and so I always thought, man, you know, you would hear these people laughing and the canned laughter in some of these sitcoms, and I would always be like, that's a beautiful sound, you know. But we grew up, you know, we had some issues, you know. My dad had tried his best to, you know, to build his businesses, and some failed and some did well. But we were always in this kind of like in between, like of a struggle.
Like limbo.
And my mother held it together. I have a sister that's disabled. And at that time, we didn't know. You know, my sister Nancy, which today is fully disabled, at that time, you know, they called her mentally retarded. They didn't know what to call her.
Yeah.
So they called her mentally retarded, which Down syndrome, she was not, right? And as we later found out, she was deteriorating in terms of her neurological system was deteriorating. What we were seeing was just this person who had probably had some, you know, by today's standards, some really bad autism that developed into other things. But so, you know, but what an amazing sister to have, right? Because she would laugh at all my shit. You know what I mean?
So she had a joy of her life, or she still does, right?
She, well, she's, you know, she's nonverbal now, and she's taking care of it home. But at that time, man, oh my God, let me tell you something. I remember taking a piece of salami and slinging it across the room, and it stuck to the door of the fridge, you know, and without saying a word to each other, but we looked at each other. And this girl laughed her ass off. And nice. I just kind of felt like I had an ally. Like I could throw salami around, you know? And she was just going to laugh at all my shit, you know? But my sister Nancy, man, what, you know, I mean, she would call, she had this, you know, this love that I just could not explain. You know, my sister Lydia would say something to me and she would be like, don't pick on my brother, stupid. You know? Yeah. She'd jump in, you know? And, you know, she was supposed to be the one that was not normal, but she was the most normal because she didn't know hate. Yeah. She didn't know anger. She didn't know fear, right? She could not connect with those emotions. Yeah. And so she woke up laughing.
It was love.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And I think a big part of the loss for me, the mourning of who she was and who she is now, that big part of is, you know, that was as close to real, genuine human I've ever been to. Yeah. My sister Nancy. You know what I'm saying to you?
Yeah, for sure, man.
So a lot of just having fun with humor. Yeah. And having her as my biggest audience member was the best because she would co-sign all my stupidness, you know?
Yeah. And so where do you fall in the brothers?
I'm the baby.
You're the baby. You're the spoiled one.
Yo soy nene de mama. Yeah.
So everybody plays a role, right?
Yeah.
So did you play like the goofball of the family?
I was the goofball of the family.
So then who were the other
My sister
characters?
Lydia is the intellect.
The intellect.
Oh, she's the intellect. My sister was, you know, a person that was protesting wars, did very well in school. My sister is the reason why I go to jazz clubs. She's the reason why I go to blues clubs. She's the reason why I travel. I mean, she was way ahead. Yeah. And those are things that she, you know, everywhere she went, she took me with her.
That's what's up.
Well, because she had no choice because she had to watch me.
You were the baby.
So she would say, hey, I'm taking her to the park. I'm taking Mikey with me to the park. What she didn't tell my parents was she was taking me to a hippie protest. Yeah. You know what I mean? They were protesting war and Vietnam or whatever the case may be, you know? So, but interesting, check this out. So the real thing, right? My sister Lydia bought home an album. And this is it right here. This is the whole base of the Mikey O show right here. My sister Lydia bought home an album. And I loved when Freddie Prince, so a lot of things you need to know about Freddie Prince. Freddie Prince was, you know, Puerto Rican comedian. He was a drummer before that. He got into comedy. Freddie Prinze makes it onto NBC. Freddie Prinze was the very first comedian, not Puerto Rican comedian, not Latino comedian, to sit in Johnny Carson's chair.
Nice.
The very first one.
As a host?
As a guest.
As a guest, okay.
When you did comedy on the Johnny Carson show before Johnny Carson, you did your comedy and you went home. Johnny Carson, Freddie Prinze was the first comedian that Johnny Carson said, hey, come here, sit here.
The first comedian?
The first comedian.
Wow.
The first comedian.
And that was like,
and
it was like Arsenio Hall, and Johnny Carson was like, you made it when you went there.
Johnny had never sat down and spoken to a comedian before.
That's amazing.
And what happened was the ratings went through the roof.
Yep.
And then the producers were like, from now on, call the comedian to the chair. And that became a popular thing. It still is today.
Yeah.
That was Freddie Prinze. Freddie Prinze was the first Puerto Rican comedian to ever perform in the White House. Jimmy Carter's inauguration night. Mm-hmm. Pablo Casals, the famous Puerto Rican cellist, played, and Freddie Prinze emceed. But when she brought home that album, and I put that album on, I would take the album and slowly play it back, and then play it again forward so I could write down the jokes.
Nice.
So I could kind of remember them. But then, why? Because I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Follow me? Like I wanted to say that.
Yeah, you were figuring out like the cadence. You were figuring out like the blueprint of how he built it.
Yeah, because here's the deal. That was my experience. Yeah. He talked about cockroaches. We had cockroaches. Yeah. Right? One of the famous jokes is, Freddie, where you going? Going to the grocery store. Don't come back with no cockroach spray or we lock you out. Man. Because if you listen, I grew up on roaches and food stamps. I mean, I'm not ashamed of that. Yeah. But he was talking about that experience. Mm-hmm. You know, my mother was Puerto Rican. My father was Hungarian. My mother was Puerto Rican. My father was Hungarian. They met on a train pickpocketing each other. That makes me a Hungarian. You know, his humor was, but those were the experiences. And I remember thinking, this guy's talking about us. Yeah. This guy, I've never heard anybody talk about us. Yeah. And I'm like, that is brilliant. And then the audience dying laughing. This was at a place called Mr. Kelly's. Yeah. So when my sister brought that album home, she has no idea that was it, that was implanted in me. And then I went to school and I got in trouble for trying to relive that album live, and nobody thought it was funny. The teachers definitely...
It was like grown-up jokes?
Yeah, definitely it was funny.
How did you know about that?
Yeah. Yeah, man. So amazing, because check this out. Years later, I get a phone call from a lady in Milwaukee who says, hey, I heard you talking about your love for Freddie Prinze. Where can I mail you that same album you're talking about?
Oh, wow.
I go, what? I have that album. I would love for you to have it. And I'm also going to send you the TV guide with Chico and the Man on the cover of the TV guide.
Nice.
But take it a step further. I'm going to send you the book his mother wrote.
Wow.
And I never knew his mother wrote a book.
Wow.
Freddie Prinze's mother wrote a book. And when you read that book and you read the part where he shoots himself in the head and she's at his bedside.
So he shot himself in the head?
He killed himself.
Oh, wow.
He killed himself, yeah. And when she's at his bedside and you read that part where she is talking to her son, and she's praying to God about her son. Mm-hmm. That's your mom. That's my mom. It's exactly the way my mom would have said. Diosito mío, cuídame mi hijo, and you're like, so she sent me all that.
Wow. I
have that more protected than I have anything else. And life-changing, though, because I always was kind of like, I always knew that I would end up somehow in the comedy business, doing something, you know?
One thing that really connected with me and what you were talking about is actually really, really crazy. Because today is the day that De La Soul's Stakes is High was published. So a CD that came out by De La Soul. I don't know if you know who De La Soul is.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Stakes is High came out today. And they were like, in 1993, today, June or July 2nd was the release of Stakes is High. That's what did it for me for hip hop.
Wow.
So it was my first CD.
Wow.
And it's up there, right there. It's one of those up there.
Oh, wow.
And it's just like, yo, I did the same thing you did with the record.
Yeah.
I like wrote down all their words and I was just like, damn, how did they put this together,
Yeah.
yo?
Yeah.
And so it's like little by little, I learned how to MC, I learned how to rap, and I learned how to produce music, and I learned how to break dance. And it's like, that was the moment that was like that eureka where I was just like, I was seeing how things were being built.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, we have these influences, you know, in that happen in our lives that stay with us.
Yeah.
You know, and that was one of them. So my sister Lydia was very unique. My sister Nancy, of course, I told you about her, and you know, then 14 years old, 15 years old, I discovered drugs, and that was not a good time in my life for many reasons. But I started getting high when I was about 14. And then pretty consistently all the way through till I was about 18.
Okay, so all through high school.
All through high school, and I got in a lot of trouble. Luckily, I didn't get in any serious legal trouble.
Yeah.
But definitely, you know, enough trouble to have now been a part of, you know. It didn't contribute very well to what was happening already in my family.
Yeah.
You know, my sister was getting sicker. My father kind of took off for a while. We didn't hear from him for a while. And my mother was, you know, she was anything she needed to be to try to get the family back together. That's who she worshiped, right? So she tried every single religion, and she was trying to just keep us together. But as my sister got sicker, my other sister got more resentful. I don't blame her. She had to take care of me. She had to take care of my sister that was disabled.
She became the parent.
She became the parent.
Yeah, I can imagine the burden of that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. She became the parent, and I don't know that I've ever spoken about this, but I'm going to talk about it. You talk about what happened next is coming to the realization through the help of other people that it was quite possible I had a drinking and a drug problem.
Yeah, I know that very well, brother.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and I ended up in a little bit of trouble. And then I just decided to. I'm trying to remember the order a little bit, but for the most part, I decided that it was time to go. So I joined the service. You know. And that was
after high school.
Yeah, that was the beginning of the discipline and the structure that I had lost during my drug years. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Those years that I lost.
They make you disciplined because they make you get up.
Yeah. Well,
make you fold your bed.
Make you fold your bed. Make you do a few things, man.
Yeah.
But that's where that's kind of like where it started to turn. For the better,
yeah,
and it was a slow pace. That's where I met Alex Ortiz. And who's Alex Ortiz? Well, Alex Ortiz is a Chicago Latino comedian. We were in the Army together, and Alex, you know, it's kind of funny because I wanted, you know, I loved Alex. I loved his humor. I loved who he was, and I was like, man, he has it. He is the guy.
Yeah. And
that was just in passing. And I remember one time I saw him, and I'm like, man, you're gonna be famous, man. You know. And sure enough, a couple of years later, here I am watching Showtime at the Apollo. And who is on Showtime at the Apollo? Alex Ortiz. And who wins the Miller Genuine Draft comedy showdown? Alex Ortiz. So that was that was a beautiful thing. Alex is still around. Alex is still doing great. Alex is still probably really technically Chicago's first Latino working comedian. When I say working the nation, the world.
Okay.
And then from
what was it like to be in the Army though? You know, like that.
Yeah.
That had to have been. Yeah. That had to have been like a trip.
Well, for clarity, I went to the Army. I was a reservist, but I immediately got assigned to a general hospital. So I was in the 801st General Hospital. If anybody out there listening, they know what that is. and I was a 91 Alpha, and then I was a Bravo. They have changed since then, but I was a medic, which is basically an EMT.
Okay.
Alex was a nurse. You know, when you see Alex Ortiz and you see his crazy ass on stage, it's hard to imagine him as a nurse, but he was a nurse.
He was saving people.
He was a nurse. He was a 91, I believe, Charlie. I think that the only thing I would have done differently is I should have gone to the Army full time.
Okay.
Because I enjoyed every day of it as a reservist.
Yeah.
We were activated through the General Hospital, which was here in Chicago.
Yeah.
And at that time, they would send you to local hospitals. So I would go to, we would go to local hospitals and do our clinical time, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a blast. It was just the discipline that I needed. Yeah. It kind of straightened me out. It also, to be honest with you, it was my what do they call it? Detox.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, imagine, because
it was my detox.
It's like going to jail, right?
Yeah, man.
It's like,
oh yeah,
you got to.
Yeah, you can drink if you want, but you weren't getting high in the Army. I mean, maybe you were, maybe you weren't, but not.
You had
not
to sneak
much.
it.
Yeah,
you had to sneak it. If you
yeah.
got caught, it was going to be.
It was going to be big time problems. Yeah, yeah. There were guys that got kicked out. I mean, that was, to me, I always kind of felt like I knew a couple of guys that got kicked out because of their drug problem, and I kind of felt that we did not do them a favor, because then no question those guys aren't alive anymore. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, we did not do them a favor by putting them back out on the street. They just needed a little extra work.
And that was part of the culture, though, because this was the 80s, right?
Yeah.
In the 80s, it was like the Reagan era.
Yeah.
It was like we're going to go after Escobar and like anti-drug and like, and really cracking down in neighborhoods with the crack.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just like the barricades and all the stuff that was happening was during that time. Yeah. Because you go from the hippie age to the neoliberal, like, corporations are trying to pump you out of money age. Yep. And that's like the Coca-Cola, like, and drugs, crack infiltrated the communities. Well, big time. And,
communities of color harder.
Yeah, for sure.
Harder.
And what there's a reason why I'm saying this is because now you have the opioid epidemic that's affecting the white population. And it's like, now it's like, we need to help these people. We need to give these people services. But in the 80s, it was just like, they're degenerates.
Yeah,
like, let them die.
Let them die. No, I remember that, because I remember working in emergency rooms, and I remember that clearly. And I remember working on, the private ambulance system in the very beginning, and I just remember that clearly. I just remember that it was kind of like, so be it, Whereas, and you're right. Right now, today, I was watching the news, and they said that the fentanyl, the opiate crisis is the pandemic. It will never supersede COVID. That it is the pandemic of pandemics.
Right? It's killing more people.
Well, because it's killing more people, and now it's killing everybody. Kind of like what happened with the pandemic. We used to say this: if something would happen if something would happen in Africa, or if something would happen in Haiti, we'll be like, oh, well, that's their problem. Yeah. The pandemic hit, and it's like, oh, it's coming after us now, right? Yeah. So there's definitely some systemic, shifting happening, Yeah. And so, but I had a great time. It was a great experience. Being a reservist, was kind of like a great thing to have as I started to seek employment. So I immediately got a job with a private ambulance company. Yeah. I got another part-time job at St. Anthony's Hospital.
Oh, right by Little Village. I live like 3 blocks away from there, man. That's crazy. Yeah. It's like the world is kind of...
100%. I worked at St. Anthony's Hospital. You're going to love this. So this is the kind of humor my mom... I always say that my mother was probably a vaudevillian. Uh-huh. And, my mother was the ultimate comedian. So this is an example of my mother. Yeah. I came home. I go, Mom, I got a job at St. Anthony's Hospital. I'll be working on the psych unit. Uh-huh. Without missing a beat, she said, Bueno, ahí no se va a saber cuáles son los locos, que no son los locos. She's
Nice.
like, they're not going to be able to tell the crazy
Who's the crazy
now.
people,
Who are
right?
the crazy people now, right? But I remember getting that job. That was a great job. But, you know, St. Anthony's, man, I kind of always kind of like felt like St. Anthony's, they let me tell you something. St. Anthony's Hospital and nurses and doctors, they put in their dues, man.
For sure.
They put in their dues because, you know, families, you know, the thing is that they were so advanced in is the fact that, they spoke Spanish. The janitor spoke Spanish. You know, the entire staff spoke Spanish.
That's
I started
dope.
working at St. Anthony's Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And so started hearing little Mexicanos, no mames way, no mames way, no mames way, no mames way, you know? So one day I'm just walking through the hallway and, you know, St. Anthony's Hospital was a Catholic institution.
Yeah.
And there are some nuns coming this way.
Uh-huh.
And I run into my buddy and he's like, yo, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no mames way, you know? And I just kept walking, you know? They call me up and they say, hey, man, do you know what that means? And I'm like, no, not really.
So you told a professional person that.
Yeah, I told a professional person that. And I'm like, no, not really. He goes, no, you can't tell people no mama's way in front of the Mother Teresa from Our Lady of the Guadalupe, blah blah blah. I'm like, oh my God, I am so sorry, but you know, anyway.
That was funny though, bro.
You know, no mama's way, no chingue. I don't know, you know, but yeah. Anyway.
So then you went through the EMT experience at St. Anthony's.
Yeah.
How did you get into? I mean, so you started like in comedy when you found a brother in the army.
Yeah.
And you were like, yo, you're gonna be a star. ¿Cómo se llamaba?
Alex Ortiz.
Alex Ortiz.
Yeah.
Alex Ortiz was like, yo, when did you start like?
Yeah.
And you were always funny, but when did you start like formulating that, or was it after that, or still no?
You know, man. No. So. There's a great Les Brown talks about double parking in life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, about how sometimes we double park in life and we hit our flashers and then we don't do what we really need to do. You know, when you double park, you're double parking for a reason, and you're waiting for something, right? You're waiting for something to happen. You're waiting for another car to move, or you're waiting for the traffic to pass you up, or whatever the case is.
That's a cool metaphor.
Yeah, he talks about that. It's he talks about a lot of us double park,
man,
and I double parked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not funny enough. Maybe I'm not smart enough. They're never going to accept me. I don't see enough of us on TV, you know, and it went on and on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started seeing Loco Locos and Que Locos. And this was on television. And this was all Latino comedies, comedians mostly from LA. And I see that show every now and then. And I'm like, man, I want to do that in Chicago, you know?
Nice. Was there anything that you saw growing up that you wanted to change?
Yeah, to this day, I have that same feeling, which is I always have. Here's kind of like with the way I've always lived my life, or the way my mind has always worked. Like, I'm grateful for what I have,
Mm-hmm.
even in my days when I was getting high or when I was younger, but I cannot be in the same room with somebody that needs. And I've always and to this day, I practice that. Like, what I mean is, you know, if I've made it a little bit,
Uh-huh.
I've got to reach back and help out a little bit. When you're hungry,
Mm-hmm.
and when you don't have gas because your mom can't afford the gas bill to heat the house up, when you don't have money to take your sister to the hospital, so you miss appointments because you can't get there, right? You never forget that.
Yeah.
You never forget being hungry. You never forget being in a room where other kids are getting gifts and you're watching them get gifts.
Yep.
You don't forget that. You never forget, you know, watching other kids pay for stuff. You know, I snap at my daughter when I ask to this day, my 9-year-old grandson, do you have money in your pocket? No. I want him to have money in his pocket.
Mm-hmm.
You follow me?
Yeah, because you want to heal that part of you. That's
exactly right.
Yeah.
Because I know what it's like to watch other kids buy a popsicle, and you can't buy one.
Yeah.
And if we can put $1 in his pocket, here's the deal. it evens it out. Why? Because the other kids may not have, right? And in their hearts and in their soul to say what? What I would have said when I was younger. Snap. Remember when the popsicles snapped?
Yeah.
Remember 2 sticks?
Yeah.
Right? Boom. Right? Here's one for you.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of like the way I live my life. Like, that's the thing that I would have liked to have changed then. That's what I strive on changing now, is making sure that there's equity.
For sure.
You know what I mean? And, you know, the biggest thing today is when did we start punishing poor people for being poor? Well, how did we get here? How did that happen, right? So
Started in the 80s, man.
it started in the 80s.
Yeah.
It started in the 80s. And, you know, I think that's the change, right? I would have loved to have that superpower to say, you know, we have to, and I do. I mean, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I am as active as I can possibly be in making sure, you know, that we help people, that, you know, I get it, you know, because I know what that's like.
And then, was there ever a moment that you had to stand up for yourself as a young person?
I remember the first time I got called a spick. I remember that like yesterday. I remember the kid's face. I remember where I was at. I was in a pool, you know, and I remember the kid just looked at me in the face and he was like, "Get out of the pool, spick." And I remember thinking to myself, you know, in a stupid way, however it was that I defended myself, I was like, you know, I might have said something like, you know, "You get out of the pool, Tweedle face," you know, or something like that, you know, because I didn't have the white version of that.
Yeah.
I didn't know the white version of that level of hate.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it's around anymore. But after that, I would glance at and this is going to crack you up, but I would glance at a box of Spick and Span and be triggered.
Yeah.
Spick and Span were what they clean the floors with, right?
Yeah.
And I'd be triggered. I swear
Like a
to
Mr.
you.
Clean.
I would be triggered. I'd glance at that box and I'd be like, "Oh, there's that word, man. There's that word," you know?
Wow.
And later, I heard a great story about the word beaner. And it's a story told by a guy that's a university. You probably know him. He's a he wrote the book The Devil's Highway. And if you haven't read that book or you don't know about this guy, I'll get you his name. But
Yeah, for sure.
I emceed a gig at the University of Illinois. And it was a panel of speakers. And this guy tells the story. This guy wrote this book, The Devil's Highway. And he tells the story about the word, you know, about the word beaner and greaser. And so the kid comes home one day and he says, "Hey, Dad, the kids at school are calling me a greaser."
Yeah.
And this kid is beat up about it. And his father's like, "Mijo, what are you doing?" "They're calling me a greaser, Dad. And every day I go to school, they call me greaser." I go, and the father says to him, "Mijo, have you no idea what that is? You need to stand proud. Have you no idea what the word greaser is? Do you know that to get the wheels going on the locomotives so that people in this country can be fed from one end to the other, to get the wheels going, they need to be greased, okay? And yes, Mexicans do that work, but we are doing work that is bigger. We are the greasers of the wheels that get America moving. Stand proud, mijo. The next time they call you a greaser, stand proud."
Yeah.
And the kid survived for however long he needed to survive on that explanation by his dad, only to find out when he entered law school that his dad had made the whole thing up.
Nice.
You know what I mean? That his dad had made the whole thing up. So when somebody told me, "Do you know where the word spick comes from?" And I'd be like, "No. No speak Spanish. No speak English. No speak it. No speak it."
Yeah.
That's where that comes from.
Okay.
And the guy said to me, "And isn't that a true fact? If you can't speak Spanish or you can't speak English, and you can't speak it. So technically, it's not that bad. No speak English, right?" But the whole time that guy's telling me this story, I'm thinking, wait a minute. Is this going to be one of those things where
it's not true?
Years from now, I find out it's not true. Anyway. But yeah, man, that was a moment to defend myself where I kind of felt like, no, I'm not going to be called names. But then you know what I realized then too? I don't like calling people names.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
I didn't feel good when I said what I said either.
No. And here's the thing though. But then also, I did not have the necessary vocabulary.
Yeah.
I was 13, 14 years old. Like I didn't have the intellectual equivalents. Like what could I say to him? What knife can I use to stab him harder?
Yeah.
I don't have that knife. Because it's not in my soul.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm 58 years old. I've never had a fight.
No?
Nope. I've got my ass whooped.
Okay.
Nice. But I've never hit a human.
Wow.
I've never hit a human. I don't know what it's like to hit a human. I've never hit a human.
It's fun.
When my you're a boxer, right? Yeah. So you hit humans, but even you don't hit humans just to hit them.
Not to bully them.
Yeah.
It's a fair fight.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, again, sticks and stones may break my bones. How does it say? But names will never hurt me. That was kind of like the thing that you teach.
Man, but names hurt the most.
They hurt the most. That's all bullshit. They hurt the most.
Yeah.
Names and ridicule and bullying hurts the most.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just like it's a stark difference. Like the experience of Chicago is different in different places. Were there any moments where like, you stood at the fork of life and you had to make a decision that was going to lead you into a direction, right? So like any pivots that you needed to make or that you made throughout your life that was like led you to be the person that you are today?
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I can't talk about that without talking about pain.
Yeah.
Because here's the deal, right? There was a lot of pain in my house.
Mm-hmm. And most comedians and funny people come from pain.
Absolutely. The joke is, right? Comedy is for people who can't afford therapy. That's in a book, right? Doing it, it's called Doing It Standing Up. The book starts that way. But I think there was a lot of pain in my home. Mm-hmm. And I had to hit the streets very, very young. I've been working since I was 10 years old. 10 years old. And I've done everything. I've been a window washer. I've been a newspaper boy. I've sold ice cream on the street. I've done every kind of job, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of that was why? For the same reason I went to the Army, for the same reason I moved out, for the same reason I started buying real estate early, was because I did not want that burden on my family. They were already taking care of a sister that required a lot of their attention.
For sure.
Some people say, well, that might be a part of your childhood trauma because you had needs as well. I don't know what the psychological equivalence of that is, but I know it was necessary for me to make that move, to try to live as much as I could on my own and buy my own things and have my own things so that my mom could take care of my sister. My dad was constantly building businesses that weren't working out. I mean, they failed, and he would say it, but he kept trying. And that was, looking back on it, he was, I never told him, but he was my business hero.
Yeah.
Because here's a guy that just got up and did it again and again and again and again with no English. With no English. So sometimes I get a little frustrated with people who speak perfect English and don't do nothing, because I'm like, I want you guys to know something. Most of our parents did it with no English.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Man.
Most parents did it with no English. So
you went to grandma's house, you had to speak Spanish.
That's it. No
Or
había
you got a
otra.
boletón,
No había otra. No había otra. That was it. Tenías que hablar español. And, I think that was it. That I had to figure out a way to survive at a very young age. And I had to make that decision almost every day, how I was going to stay out of the way. Because my mom, I would see her suffer with my sister all the time.
Yeah.
And so, it's possible, I'm not a therapist, that I did not get that same attention that my sister Lydia, because then my sister Lydia, again, we talked about her. I mean, it was very difficult for her. She was trying to be a young lady herself, and she was now raising a brother, right? Being a nurse to a sister, right? and being a therapist to my mother,
Yeah, man.
you know, and trying to live her life. So
Man, we need to give her some flowers, though, man.
all the time, man.
That's incredible.
all the time.
You know,
All the
and
time.
I'm glad that she'll have a chance to listen to you say this. I know she's probably heard you before, but
Yeah.
I think that it's important to give those kudos to a person who sacrificed without having the choice to say no.
Right.
Because it's like mom tells you need to do it, you got to do
Yeah.
it. There's no other choice, you know. I try not to do that to my oldest, but I do it a little bit. I'm like, hey man, make sure that the little kids not doing what
Yeah.
they like. Make sure that they're not messing around with stuff. Like before you came, the little one walked in here and started messing with everything. I was like, oh. And I was like, I told my oldest, I was like, were you there with her? And then my wife was like, no, she wasn't. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. The little one says, I'll destroy this shit on my own. Right?
Man, the cameras were all upside down.
I love
It was, I had to put everything back together.
Love it, man. Love it.
But yeah, so the oldest gets it.
Yeah.
You know, and I can imagine having a sister that had a disability, having a mom that might have been going through things.
Yeah, man.
Like,
Yeah.
those were really heavy on her shoulders.
Yeah. And she was getting calls from my schools regularly. I was always in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, the payback, I think, is that, you know, she saw me, you know, turn my life around, you know, and we're talking straight up here. We're not trying to be mushy or nothing, but she saw me turn my life around and at least stay out of trouble and stay alive. And that's kind of like, you know,
Redemption.
redemption, man.
For sure, man. I mean, that's a story that you hear in AA all the time. It's just like you'll hear a story of a person that was like the mess up.
Yeah.
It was just like, don't invite that person to the party because they're gonna get like that, or they're just like that. They're gonna steal stuff. They're gonna, everything that was negative you associated to that person. The person turns sober, goes through the 12 steps, lives them, and now the parents are passing, and they're the ones that are helping the parents write the will.
Yeah.
They're the people who they're getting the calls to like tend to things.
Yeah.
When they were the opposite of that person before, they were like the person you didn't want to have around the will. You didn't want to have take care of their parents. And it's important to recognize the changes that we make as people. And you're right. There's that redemption, right? So that redemption is a story I hear very often in rooms and in meetings with AA, where it's just like nobody trusted me, and now I'm the person that the whole family goes to when they need advice or when they need support.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And so if you could speak to yourself as a child, what would you say to them?
Man, I think if I could speak to myself as a child, I would say to me, you had no choice. You did the best you could. You know, you had no choice. You were in survival mode most of the time. And you had no choice, you know. And when I talk about I had no choice, you are 12, 13 years old. You've got a raging mother who's trying to keep her husband.
Mm-hmm.
You've got an angry sister who's beating your ass or beating your ass mentally as well.
Mm-hmm.
You've got another sister who is ill. I was tending to seizures, active seizures with a screaming mother in the middle of the night on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, you know, when we talk about young people and somebody says to me, you know, this child isn't learning,
mm-hmm.
or this child is not doing well in class. So I understand now why I couldn't sit still.
Yeah.
I understand now why I was misbehaved. I understand now
Mm-hmm.
why I was out of control.
Yeah.
Right? Because my brain was out of control, because my house was out of control, and it's just things that happen. But I think I I think I would say to myself, you had no choice. You did the best you could. This was an incredible amount of stress to put on a 12, 13-year-old kid.
For sure.
And the reason you got into drugs, Mikey O, was because it was an amazing, amazing, amazing tranquilizer.
Coping mechanism.
Coping.
Yeah.
Coping. I mean, it's really the bottom line. The bottom line was, man, I mean, you know, I talk about, you know, weed and marijuana and alcohol to my kids in this way, which is, it was necessary. You need to be understood and heard by a doctor that can say this is going on. But if you don't have that doctor, then all of a sudden you got a guy sitting next to you. In this case, you know, one of my cousins was like, you know, try this, man, right? And I used to tell a joke. They used to call me ear in high school, right? Why? Because ear, you know? I smoked a lot of weed. It might have been recreational, but it was mostly it was mostly medicating myself.
For sure.
Self-medicating,
Yeah.
you know? And that wasn't my fault either. There was no, you know, I didn't know, you know? And again, it wasn't until you learn about this as you grow older. That's what happened. That's what was going on as a kid. Now I get it. Now I understand. So I do understand when a kid goes to school and he's misbehaving and nobody can figure it out. What's going on at home, right? You know, so.
I mean, that grace is really important. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the grace that you get for yourself in the program, you know, like you come to terms with what happened and you forgive yourself and you move on.
Yeah.
You don't forget. You know, you keep it going, but you understand that this is a different way that I'm going to live now.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's really important because people will hold on to that negativity. It's like a backpack, and it's like every negative experience that you put a brick inside that backpack. It's only going to hold so much before it explodes.
That's exactly right.
And you have to alleviate your back from that. And so that giving that grace to yourself is taking those things out and being like, yo, maybe you needed to be that person at that time. You're this person now, but you know, sometimes people carry those insecurities or those coping mechanisms or those triggers as adults, and they don't realize that they just need to let it go. And I think that it's important to get to a point where you're just like, yo, you were a kid. For me, it was like my mom passed away from cancer in 2006. And so, you know, when my mom passed away, there was a guilt that I had because my mom always wanted to have me do things with her. Like she was an Avon lady and was like part of the President's Club. So if you know about Avon and the President's Club, she was like the top of the top.
Yeah.
Got invited to the conferences and stuff like that. She got invited to go to Louisiana and to New Orleans. And she was like, Jesus, you want to go with me? And I was like, no, I got to perform. I got to do this. And my life was so important. Everything was so important that I was doing that I had no time for my mother. And when my mom passed away, there was a guilt that I felt where I was just like, man, like there was so many things I could have done and shared, like moments I could have shared with my mother. And I felt really bad. But my mom, my uncles were just like, yo, you were a kid, dude.
Yeah, man.
Like as a kid, you got to forgive yourself, man.
Yeah, man.
Like you were a kid, just relax. Like you were thinking like a kid. And it's okay to be that.
Because you were supposed to be a kid.
Yeah.
Because you were a kid. You were supposed to be a kid.
Yeah. And so there was a forgiveness that I had to give. I had to give myself grace on that. Because I was just like, man, I felt real bad about that.
Yeah, man.
Because it's just like, you think that you're going to have your parents forever. And at 26, you lose your parent.
Yeah.
And I'm raised by a single mom.
Yeah.
I'm an only child raised by a single mom and adopted.
Yeah.
So it was just like, there were a whole bunch of layers of like,
wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like she was my family.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, it's tough, but it's also important to let go. So kudos to what you're saying, right? You had no choice.
Yeah, but and here's the thing, man. This is the big thing about men and mental health right now, you know? I saw a great clip a few days ago of what a room would look like. You know, what we hope a room will look like one day. It's a bunch of guys at this coffee house, and some are messing around BSing, but the other ones are sharing deep information, right? Deep conversations about therapy, about mental health, about well-being. And that's the thing. It's they say, I forgot how it went, but it's never too late for a happy childhood.
Yeah.
You got to seek it. You got to figure that out, because the thing is that there were things that happened to us that we're pissed off about at ourselves, but we were kids.
Yeah.
You're a kid. We were kids. I mean, we really were not supposed to be dealing with the level of shit that we were dealing with. Most Latino kids at the age of 12 and 13 years old were already translators, professional translators, already professional babysitters, already professional, because that was the survival of the neighborhood. That's the survival of being in this country as Latinos.
Yeah.
And maybe it was the African American experience too, and all the other experience. I get it, but I speak of the one I know, and that's mine. And at very young ages, we were doing things. We were mechanics. We were cooks. There are still to this day 12-year-old girls that are making full dinners for their kids because both of their parents are in a factory.
Yeah, for sure, man.
You know what I mean? When I drive down the street, and it's the wee hours of the morning, and I see a Latina woman at a bus stop, and she looks like a person that might have a family, I know what's going on that other end. Somebody's getting those kids ready for school. Somebody is cooking for those kids, and 9 times out of 10, it's a sibling.
The oldest
sibling. You're not supposed to do that. You know what I mean? You do it, and you do it proudly, but the point is, you should have some level of childhood, of teenhood. Sure. You follow me?
Yeah. You should be a child.
You should be a child.
Worry-free.
That's it.
Yeah. And so, how did you fall in love with comedy? I mean, you already talked about but the role that you're in now.
Yeah, the role that I'm in now. So I am a producer of comedy, theater, and music, but here's the way it really went down. This is it right here. I had always wanted to do comedy, and I had always wanted to. I was the guy in every scenario, including the Army, including my community center. I was the guy that volunteered always. If there was a microphone involved, I volunteered, or they knew that I was the guy that was not afraid, so they volunteered me, right? So I started working for 5 years, the International Latino Film Festival.
Yes.
Okay, Pepe Vargas. I volunteered for Pepe every year at the film festival. All right? And I volunteered to do whatever I had to do just to get this one opportunity to have him let me introduce a film.
Okay.
That was a big deal. I'm going to introduce a film, right?
Yeah.
And so I started working for Pepe, and little by little, I had developed into a full-blown event producer, because if you ever volunteer for Pepe Vargas, you're doing all the work. You're doing lights and sound and setup and bartending and everything. And so I literally transitioned into this kind of producer guy.
Okay.
What happens? I then became very respected and very liked by Latin bands, okay, and by musicians, right? And so now I've got musicians that people are calling me to book a band or this, that, the other. And then that was kind of like, something that I did as a little bit of a hobby. And then I'm in the grand jury. Not the jury, but the grand jury. I don't know if you've ever been to the grand jury, but you're locked up for a month. Did you know that?
You're talking about in court?
In court.
Oh, okay. I see.
The grand jury.
I thought it was like a group or something.
The grand jury.
Okay.
And you couldn't bring there was no real cell phone activity back then, but you couldn't bring anything with you.
Yeah, because you have to be impartial.
Magazines, but no newspapers, that kind of thing, right? I'm reading a magazine, and it's Chicago Magazine. And as I'm reading this magazine, I come across an article, and the article says that the Adler Planetarium that the Adler Planetarium is the museum that Latinos visit the least.
Oh.
Okay? And I'm like, huh. And then I started thinking about this, and then it occurs to me, well, of course they visited the least. Puerto Rico doesn't have a space program.
Mm-hmm.
Mexico doesn't have a space program. Spain doesn't have a space program. We don't have space programs. I mean, you know, in terms of sending people to the moon, right?
Yeah.
So I got on the phone the next day, and I called the planetarium. And I'm like, I have an idea. And the lady's like, who is this? And I'm like, my name is Mike Oquendo. What's the name of your company? Rumba.
Okay.
What? The name of my company is Rumba Events.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, Rumba Events. Never heard of you.
Quick on your feet.
I go, yeah, well, that's the name of the company. It's Rumba Events. And I do Latin music events. And I hope Carlito Santiago's watching this because we still work together, but this happened. And the lady's like, well, what's your idea? I said, well, here's my idea. Okay. Every Thursday, we'll do salsa there. Okay. And if you've got Latin music, we want Latin food. Do you have a caterer in-house, or how can we get the food there? No, we cook here in the planetarium. At that time, everything was done in-house. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for example, if I do a Mexican band, then we do Mexican food. If I do a Puerto Rican band, we do salsa, Puerto Rican food.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The lady was like, we'll get back with you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't call me back. I end up calling them back maybe a month later. And finally, I get a call back from an awesome lady named Colleen Duke.
Okay.
And Colleen says to me, we like your idea. Why don't you put it on paper, write a proposal, put it all together, and send it in? And I never read no proposal. Didn't know anything about that, right? We weren't using YouTube the way we use it today. We weren't using the internet the way we use it today. But I had kind of an idea what it was.
Okay.
So literally I wrote down, every Thursday, a salsa band, and at the bottom, I was supposed to send her a number. I just wrote $15,000. Send it in, wait a week, they call back, we'll do it. And
Nice.
I was there for 5 years.
Nice.
Now what happens? Now I've got this following, and I am packed at the planetarium every single Thursday. I am going home with a ridiculous amount of money, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I was coming home with a ton of money. I didn't have a bank account. I didn't have a company name. I didn't have an LLC, an incorporation, nothing.
Yeah.
They made the check out to Mike Oquendo. That was it,
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? I started rotating bands through there, bands we didn't know. And when I ran out of a band, what did I do? Orquesta Rumba. I took the same musicians from all the different bands, put them in one band, and Carlitos helped me, and we created a band called Orquesta Rumba.
Nice.
And so that was the 13th band
Okay.
that we rotated through there.
Mm-hmm.
And we created an album. I mean, it was crazy, and we were killing it. And then the comedy thing always hung here, always hung here, always hung here, always hung here. And I said, you know what? I'm ready. I know how to produce. I know exactly what I'm doing, right? So I started going to open mics, and every time I went to an open mic, no Latinos, 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 no Latinos. And I took a comedy workshop with a guy named Jim Roth. He still does them today, to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, I took his comedy workshop. 5 years later, Gwen took my comedy workshop.
Yeah.
I've never really considered myself, I don't call myself a comedian. I don't do that because I'm not what I call a working comic. Can I be funny? Yeah. Am I funny when I host? Probably. But here's the thing. I knew exactly what was going to happen because I wanted to recreate what was happening in that Freddie Prinze album,
Yeah.
which was that roaring laughter.
Yep.
To this day, I'm never backstage. I don't sit backstage. I'm with the audience. I don't, I tell, as a matter of fact, I did an interview a couple of days ago and I said, I'm a fan first. I'm a fan of this first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And everything else is second. I'm a fan of every comedian I've ever worked with here. I'm a fan of Joey. I'm a fan of Alex. I'm a fan of Ricky Carmona. I'm a fan of, Joey Villagomez. I'm a fan of Abby Sanchez. I'm a fan of every comic I've ever worked with. you know.
It has to be that way because you're promoting them, right?
Well, I'm promoting them there, but, you know, they're talented. They don't, you know, I get a lot of people that say to me, oh, you've done so much for Joey's career, this guy's career, that guy's career. Let me tell you something. I didn't write one of their jokes. What I did was I provided a platform. Why? Because back in the day, we had the potential for the comedians. We didn't have the audiences. Mm-hmm. So what I did was immediately focus on developing the audiences. Mm-hmm. How do we get Latinos to come into these rooms? Mm-hmm. Right? And that's what I focused on. And that's when things kind of blew up a little bit, because we went from 40 people, 70 people, 90 people, 300 people every week.
And you built a brand.
And we built a brand. And we helped a lot of comedians. The thing about it is, it's a very difficult, you know, look, I'm the guy that's got to tell you no. Right? I sit in a very difficult seat, right? And it's very difficult because I'm the guy that's got to decide if you, regardless of who you are ready for a big audience or not. And you can, I used to have a sign that I used to have. I took it down because when I used to broadcast live, people would say that's kind of vulgar. Don't make me the, right? Don't make me the, in other words, work on yourself, work on what you're doing. But then if I tell you, no, you can't do the show, he's a, right? Don't make me the, be on time, be professional, respect the light, respect the audience, know your material. Don't walk on stage drunk. Don't, he's a, so when you lay the rules down in any scenario, in any role, it becomes a situation where it's kind of like he's difficult to work with or whatever. But we put a lot of people on stage. Yeah. I mean, you got to think about
it. You're representing your brand, and if somebody's walking up on stage drunk, they're representing your brand.
Yeah. Well, the marriage that we did, the thing we did the best, Jesus, the thing we did the best was we married the community. What did we do? Little Village was a big recipient of that. We would get a phone call from a nonprofit in Little Village. Yo, we need some funds. This is going out. No problem, Papa. I'm going to give you 100 tickets to my show. You're going to sell them. You're going to keep the money. Okay? And they would sell 100 tickets and raise $2,500. And that's how, because the audiences needed, the comedians needed what? Audiences. And what did they need? Money. So it was a beautiful marriage. To this day, that's called Comedians for Communities. Yeah. And we've raised a lot of money for nonprofits. I would say, seriously, in 20 years, we've raised $1 million. Wow. No doubt. Because for about 5 or 6 years straight there, we were raising between $80,000 and $100,000 a year. And the comedians did that, but the comedians were performing in front of full houses every night. Yeah. And the comedy clubs that disliked us because they were doing 80 and 100 people. We were in the Latinos, 300-400 people, rocking and killing them, Yeah. So that's it. How did the Mikey O brand start? Well, I'm sitting at home one day after my first show, which was at a place called Reunion. And I did it with a guy named Victor Monroy. And we were expecting 100 people. Yeah. And we ended up packing the place. And I'm now sitting in my living room with $3,400.
Nice.
Right? Well, how do you deposit $3,400, right? So a couple more shows later, I've built this up to about $9,500 sitting in my house. I call a friend of mine and I say to her, she worked in the bank, and I go, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. I got this money coming in. She goes, you have to open up a bank account. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what kind of bank account? A business bank account. Well, how do I do that? Well, you need an LLC, at least an LLC. Well, what's an LLC? And we went through that whole process. Yeah. What are you going to call the company? And she points to a picture in my living room. And she said, oh my God, that's such a beautiful picture of you when you were a little boy. Oh, that's so cute, que lindo. What did they call you? And I go, Mikey O. And she said, well, then that's your name of your company, Mikey O Comedy Show. The next day, went to the bank. I got the articles of incorporation. I did all the paperwork. And that was the Mikey O Show. That's how that happened. Wow. And for a long time, my baby, that picture of me when I was 5, that was the brand. Nice. But man, we have had so many comedians. I mean, when you look back, TJ Miller, who's, world traveling comic on many televisions. And most people know who TJ Miller. not Latino. Kamel, not Latino. We've had comedians on our stages because we didn't do, I would always say, I don't want to do to them what they did to me, what they've done to us.
You got to be inclusive.
Right. Because here's the deal. That's how we pay them back. Right? You know what I'm saying? We pay them back by,
Give them a kindness.
Right. That's exactly right. And these comedians worked our stages. And to this day, a lot of those comedians will tell you our stages were the best stages.
Yeah.
You know, because they felt like, yo, we were at home. We're not sitting with bachelorette parties, and we were sitting with people who wanted to come out and listen to comedy, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's it. That's pretty much it. And, you know, we were the first people to do a diversity show. We were the first people to do an all-female show. We were the first people to have Chicagoans. Joey Villagomez, myself, and Ricky Carmona were the first people on HBO from Chicago. Okay? The very first people. And Ricky Carmona went on to become Tosh Poino's writer. And he's now writing for another show. He's now writing for America's Funniest Videos, by the way.
Okay.
He's now the writer for that, you know. A writer-producer. But anyway, Joey Villagomez has gone on to become the first Latino from Chicago on Comedy Central. Gwen La Roca, the first Latina from Chicago on HBO, right? Patty Vasquez, right? First Latina from Chicago radio host, but a nationally touring comedian, right? So we've got a lot of that has happened. And for me, it started with that album because I know this is going to sound weird, but I can tell so much about a comedian by listening to the audience. By listening to the audience.
Okay, break that down.
I know where they're laughing from.
Okay.
Right? You get the sympathy laugh, and then you get the belly laugh, and then you get the I'm out of oxygen laugh. And sometimes I'm
it's like the cry for the babies.
That's exactly right. And sometimes I'm listening, and so comedians come off stage, and they say to me, how did I do? I hate that question. Weren't you just on stage? Yeah. You tell me how you did. Right? You tell me how you did. And if the comedian is honest and says, yo, I don't think I did that well, I'll book that comedian for the rest of his life, even if he never gets better. Why? Because he's in touch with his material.
Word.
You follow me?
And you get to see after the show.
Yeah.
After the show, you get the lines.
Yeah.
And if you don't got a line.
Yeah, well, and the audience, so here's the thing.
I mean, that's the first time I experienced, like I went to one of your shows and then all the comics were back in the lobby.
Yeah.
And you would see
the people waiting to meet him and talk to them and, you know, and and then they would wait for the ones that wouldn't come out. But here's the thing. I tell people this all the time, from the sound guy to the lighting guy to the venue owner to the comedians. Okay? Stop lying to yourself. We work for the audience.
Yeah.
Okay? I know you brought your girlfriend with you to the show. She's cute, and she might have laughed a couple of times. We don't work for her. We don't work for the sound guy. We don't work for the other comedians that are here. We work for the audience. Let the audience decide who you are. You work for them. Then if you work for them, just like a carpenter or just like a plumber or just like a mechanic, then work for them.
Yeah.
Then work for them. Put the work into that material.
Yeah.
Right? And often, you know, sometimes, you know, I can always tell the comedian that's going to make it. Who's that comedian? That's a comedian that does exactly what a carpenter would do. That nail did not go in the wall. What is the technique I need to get that nail in the wall?
So they're willing to learn.
They're coming off the stage. They're going right back to their journals, and you can tell they're rewriting the joke or they're questioning it on paper. They're not doing shots. They're not chasing the girls in the audience. They're not chasing the guys in the audience. They're going back to their little corners and they're writing down their notes.
Nice.
Right? They're in touch with what's up. What are they doing? They're working on their craft. And you have to respect that. I always tell the audiences, ladies and gentlemen, you know, when you watch the news, the reporter, as cute as he may be, and as solid as he may speak, he didn't write that. It was written for him. When you go see a play, that actor is executing in a very, very fine, in a very, 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 very outstanding way the work somebody else wrote.
Yeah. So
A
there's the back
stand-up-
room. There's a back.
Right. A stand-up is performing what he wrote.
Yeah.
He wrote that. He built it in his head and he wrote that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is work.
Yeah.
Not to take away from anybody else, but that is work. So respect that, right? Quiet, Tell the audience, hey, keep the crosstalk in the room to a minimum. The comedians you're about to see here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, this is an amateur night. These are working comedians. Let's show them some love by keeping the crosstalk in the room to a minimum. All that is saying is, this brother has spent hours.
This is their work.
This is their craft. We're basically walking up to an artist that's painting and knocking down the paint when we are talking during a comedy show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what does that do to you? Like, how do you handle it as a planner of these events?
As a producer?
Yeah, as a producer, where you're just like,
yeah,
you hear the crosstalk or you hear.
Yeah. I shut it down.
Yeah.
No, I shut it down. I mean, I have asked people to leave. So, we have a system, and we have a system that works very well. And the first thing that happens is somebody from my staff will go up to them and say, hey, folks, people around you are trying to enjoy the show. If you can keep the crosstalk to a minimum, that'd be great. Keeps on. I send one more person in there. That person will go in there and say, hey, ladies and gentlemen, listen, we told you once already. We're trying to put on a show here. The folks around you have paid to see a show. We're trying to give them the best show possible. So if you can keep the crosstalk in a minute. The third time, I walk right up and I say, your bill's been settled. Have a good night. You got to go. Mm-hmm. What? You got to go. What? We paid? No, you paid to listen, not to talk. You got to go. Now here, you're leaving, but then what do? Then I throw him a curveball and I say, by the way, here's 2 tickets to the next show. Mm-hmm. We're going to let you try it again. The amount of people that have emailed me that night and said, yo, I am so embarrassed. Or the next morning, I'm really sorry. Mm-hmm. Or they'll send me a long apology. And I'm like, no, we're good.
Yeah.
But let us do our job, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Where do you work? Where do you work? You work at the post office? I'm going to go in there tomorrow and start yelling.
Heckling.
Start yelling, right? Yeah. I'm going to go in there tomorrow and start yelling. I'm going to, where do you work? You work in an ICU unit? I'm going to go in tomorrow and just start unplugging IVs, okay? So the thing is that let us do our job.
Yeah.
And so when you see anything you see on YouTube or you see on social media that a comedy show went crazy, who's responsible for that? The producer. Where was the producer? When I see a comedian attacked, where was the producer? When I see somebody disrupting a comedy show, where was the producer?
That's wild, man. You sound like a teacher.
No, I jump out of my seat. I'm like, yo, you good, man? I don't want you to leave, Bob, but you got to bring it down a notch. Let him do his thing.
Yeah, you got to read the room.
I'm funny too, Papa. I can do jokes too. You know what? You probably can. But right now, nobody paid to see you. All right? So, vete pa tu casa, okay? Vete, acuéstate a dormir,
Yeah.
But it also, try to understand that a part of one of the things that also happens in comedy is I do see myself in Jesus, right? So if I see myself in Jesus, now I feel like Jesus, if Jesus is talking about that one time he got in the gym and he was boxing with a dude and maybe that may have happened to me, all of a sudden I feel connected to Jesus on another level.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to shut up because I'm like, yo, that happened to me, bro.
Yeah.
That's not heckling.
Yeah. Yeah, that happened to Gwen, man. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
Where it was just like, she was doing the Mi Casa, Su Casa.
Yeah.
And there was a guy that was like, oh my God, yeah. And the whole time, my wife and I are at the show like,
yeah,
yo, he has to be related to her.
Yeah.
And then we did the podcast and she was like, yo, I did not know that dude. Yeah. He was having a great time.
Yeah. 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 And that's not heckling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, sometimes people say, this guy's laughing really loud. Mama, you're not laughing at all.
That's how you know.
Okay? You're not laughing at all. So, I mean, you're not in the same, are you in the same room? Are you at the same comedy show?
Yeah.
This, I don't know if you saw recently, Sebastian Maniscalco, the guy fell asleep right in front of him.
Oh,
have you seen that yet?
No, I have not.
You got to Google it. Sebastian Maniscalco. This guy was sound asleep. Sebastian is talking to him, and he's not waking up. He is sound asleep, right? That happens.
Yeah.
Right? Am I mad at that guy? No, but we don't know what kind of day that guy had. That guy
or he might have taken some medication.
Or he might have taken some medication.
Or may have taken some medication and drank.
But I thought that was the best. And I'm going to tell you something. Those are some of those little things like that happen. Those are some of the joys of the work we do. I work for the audience.
Okay.
If you come to my show and the room's too cold,
Yeah.
I got to turn the heat up, man.
Yeah.
If you come to my show and they served you a pizza that was cold, right? I'm taking care of that.
Yeah.
I cannot have you leave my show unhappy.
Yeah.
Because I'm a one-man operation. I'm not a multi-million-dollar comedy operation. And I need you to go back and tell people things, amazing things about me
Yeah.
or about my show or about my comics. And if you leave upset, usually if I find out about it, I'm hunting you down and I'm going to find out what happened. I'm going to resolve it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to keep your money. You came out for an experience. You didn't enjoy the experience. Talk to me about what happened. 9 times out of 10, I'm like, yo, my man, got to come back. Give us one more try.
Mm-hmm.
Give us one more try. You didn't lose your money. Okay. You're now going to see 2 or 3 shows until we get it right because we do make mistakes.
And then as far as like a little bit on the funnier side, like what are some of those events that you've witnessed where somebody's falling asleep in the front row, or like what are some of those weird things that have happened to you while you were producing the show?
Man, we did a show. So I do a show and the comedian brings out a rooster. Got it? Okay.
That's part of his
That's
bit.
part of his bit. On a real live rooster.
Yeah.
On the exact same day that a lady shows up to the dog, to the show, she's blind and she's got a seeing eye dog, and the rooster freaks the dog out. The dog freaks out, and this lady is blind, and this show now becomes this
barking and like
and the comedian that happened to, hopefully he's watching this, Ellie Castro, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, what are the chances?
Yeah.
That I bring his rooster out for this show, and there is this lady with a seeing eye dog, and this whole thing becomes a rooster crowing and a dog losing his mind, and the audience was like, at that moment, the audience was like, we're good. We can go home now. This is it. We don't need any more show,
Yeah, how did he recover? Or did he need to recover?
Oh,
it was it was funny by itself.
Well, it was funny by itself, but we got rid of the rooster. We were trying to be respectful,
What is your creation process like? Like, how do you start ideas? Like when you're formulating something?
Yeah. I love theme. So fajitas and greens and all in betweens, different yet the same. A black comic, Latino comic, Arab American comic, Irish comic, Mexican comic, and African American comic. That's fajitas and greens and all in betweens. That was our college show.
Mm-hmm.
I had 3 comedians named Frank Santorelli, who was the bartender in The Sopranos.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Townsend from the movie. From the show. I believe it was it Barbershop? And then Frank Lucero, the Mexican comedian. So those were 3 Franks. So what was the name of the show?
3 Franks in a Blanket.
Let's Be Frank. Let's Be Frank.
Okay.
My female show was called Le Funny Femmes, then Las Comadres, a comedy. Then it was Girl, Let Me Tell You. So those were those 3 shows. My Italian show was the Paisano Comedy Tour. My Irish show was called Those Funny Irish. And those were all names that I gave them because I just thought it was too easy to just say it's a comedy show Saturday night. I hate that. Comedy.
You want to give them a hook too.
Yeah, I want to give them a hook.
And you want them to, like, when they refer to it to their friend, to be like, it's Paisanos. We're gonna go see the Paisanos.
I had a comedian.
The Paisan.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a comedian from New York City. I can't remember his name. Very funny, and he was Jewish. And then we had a comedian named oh my God. Anyway, these 2 comedians, but one was Jewish and one was Puerto Rican. So that show was called El Judío y El Jodido.
That's great.
And that was, see what I'm saying to you? And I was like, you know why? Because, I couldn't even remember their names now, but it was kind of like, if I would have put these names on this flyer, nobody would have known them. But I think we packed it, right?
You branded it so that people, it's easy for people to remember. It's like a QR code.
I have all these flyers. Let me tell you something. When New York City happened, 5 years later, 5 years after 9/11, somebody said to me, did you know that one of the firemen from 9/11 is a comedian? Billy Bingo is his name, and that's his real name. When I saw a picture of this fireman coming out of the burning building with his axe and his thing, I called New York City. I tracked them down. I found them, and I said, hey, we're doing a show in Chicago, okay? And it was America's funniest come out for America's bravest. Mm-hmm. And we packed the venue with firefighters. And so we've taken all these different themes. The most controversial theme I've ever done.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. So we had a comedian from Ireland, Mexico, Poland, Guatemala, and Nigeria. And they were all immigrants. And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I'm like, I'm going to do it anyway. Right? Initially, it was the illegals of comedy.
Ooh.
Yeah. Then that was not really good enough, right? Yeah. That was kind of like, I didn't like the name because I kind of felt like I need to hit a little harder.
Okay.
Right? And we end up doing the show, sells out one night, second night, third night, and now it's a popular show, mm-hmm. Right? And it happened to be probably in our top 3 most popular shows that had life, that ran for a while. Mm-hmm. And it was a very funny show. But those were funny stories about their experience about being in this country. And to this day, I kind of felt like that show should have been a college class. Because those were real stories. Hysterical, but real stories. Yeah,
and
man.
So if you were to tell somebody growing up that wanted to produce shows,
yeah,
to tell them like kind of the back end of it, right? So like we've had MCs that talk about like how they freestyle. We've had Ramon Static in one of our episodes that talks about he approaches a building and how he approaches it to paint a mural on it.
Yeah.
We've had people talk about how they do Filipino martial arts. And it's like the nuances that only a person who has dedicated their life to it would know. What would you tell somebody that wanted to get into producing shows? What would you tell them about that lifestyle, or what to look out for, or how to make it happen?
Yeah. So again, you work for the audience. Mm-hmm. If you're developing or building something that you're going to put in front of people, remember that they're not dumb. The audience is not dumb. The audience is forgiving, but they're not dumb. And so, make sure that the content that you're creating is as organic as it can be, and that if you're working with talent, that you are working with your talent, respecting your talent, letting them flourish, right? But also being a good, but also guiding them through that, right? Yeah. It's a big day for everybody. It's a big day for the audience. Producing is not easy. Mm-hmm. Producing is not easy. You got to think about producing this way, okay? I'm the guy that goes to Vegas every single day and rolls the dice and hopes it works. Mm-hmm. That's what producing is.
Yeah,
that's what producing is. And Oscar Hammerstein, which I have it here and I'll read it to you in a second, has a wonderful, wonderful, explanation of what a producer is. And he's on point 100%. We're just kind of like people that enjoy something. We want to share it, right? A producer or a promoter, right? We have this thing that we want to share with you and have you experience with it. And hopefully you're not a four-waller. Do you know what a four-waller is?
No, but I can imagine.
A four-waller is a person that wants to fill the 4 walls and doesn't care what the content is.
I get you.
Right?
Yeah.
So it would be like me being a boxing promoter, packing the place, and then just having a horrible fight on
garbage fights,
right? That's a four-waller, right? Four-waller is a promoter that's just there for the money.
Yeah.
I can tell you this. I've made money but I've never been there just for the money. Because people have said, oh, you've had a lot of great shows. I've had a lot of bad shows.
Yeah.
Right? The idea is, if you love what you do, I love what I do. And I have enjoyed every day of it. I don't enjoy what's happened in the last 5 years, but it's the same thing that's happened in every work scenario. Work ethic is just really poor right now. Right?
Oh, is it?
Well, here's the deal. Comedians showing up late, back in the day, my contracts all said, if you're going to be late, don't bother. You've already been replaced.
Yeah.
Right? Showing up, disrespecting the light, disrespecting the sound guy, being intoxicated in the venue, right? Showing up looking like a complete, and what I say this is like, it's like, if you love what you do, right? Whatever it is that your look is, make that your look, and that's completely okay. But I can tell when you don't care. You can
smell it.
You can smell it. You can look at it. And the thing is that I work for the audience, right?
Yeah.
And so that's not what I promised the audience, right? So, but here's what I keep telling people all the time. And I do this whether you're interested in becoming a pilot or a comedian, whether you're interested in becoming a judge or a chef, whatever. Who cares?
I didn't expect that.
Who cares? Who cares if you fail? Who cares? You can't get beat up. You can't go to jail. You can only kill yourself.
Okay.
Right? And it's difficult. And it's going to be difficult. Because if it was easy, there'd be 90 of you.
Yep.
There'd be 900 of you.
Yep.
There'd be 9,000 of you. But in every scenario that I've ever jumped into, I did not necessarily belong there. When we did those HBO specials for Joey, myself, and Ricky, I got those gigs. Okay? They called me for those gigs. I called Joey. I called Ricky. Boom. We were done. The thing is that I had no experience negotiating contracts. My shows have been in almost every venue in Chicago, including the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I've been on every television channel, right? And in all those scenarios, I will tell you that there was never once that I'd said to myself, I don't belong here. Why not? Why don't I belong there? I'm a representative of this city. I'm a part of this city's culture. In my own little strange way, I'm a part of the fiber of the city. We all are.
Yeah.
We all are. And so go where you're not expected to go. Go where, you may feel like you're not welcome and say, ta-da, I'm here. But you cannot go if you don't prepare.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is we can't cry about what we're not given if we're not going to play the game at that same level.
Yeah, when you're given the opportunity, you have to be able to take it on and do it to the fullest extent.
If you're a baseball player and you're not practicing and your swing is off,
and somebody gets hurt,
my point is you can't expect the team to say, well, you're really a nice guy, so we're going to let you be on the team. And it's very difficult. Yeah. Right? You know what I'm saying? Now, the comedy clubs are booking Latinos. Now they're booking Latinos. Okay? Nobody was booking Latinos 7-8 years ago. Not on a regular basis. 8 years ago, not on a regular basis. There's a comedy club here in Chicago, a well-known comedy club here in Chicago, historically would book 1 or 2 Latino comedians a year, and it was on a Monday or a Tuesday. And to this day, a lot of clubs are like that. You'll see that the headliners are white and that they're not Latino on the nights, the big nights, the Fridays and the Saturdays and the Sundays where a young Latino comedian could flourish. Yeah. Right? I don't know of anything or any scenario that I am afraid of. And not because I'm this grand producer or this grand thinker, only because what I've learned is, who cares? What are they going to say? No? Okay. We'll try again.
Take your shot.
Take your shot. Take your shot. And you can't die doing something you cannot stand to do. Don't do that. You know,
Yeah.
don't do that.
What would you tell somebody young that wants to explore? Any advice that you would give them?
You're never going to shine in life, ever, ever, ever. I promise you that 100%. I promise you, you're never going to shine unless you do exactly what it is you want to do. That's it. You're never going to shine. You're just going to be clock in, clock out, clock in, clock out, clock in, clock out, clock in, clock out, 27 years, clock in, clock out, clock in, clock out, 30 years, finally got my passion, clock in, clock out, clock in, clock out, oh, time to pass away.
Yep.
You're never going to shine.
And you might pass away before that.
So
I had a friend that fell asleep, man. He's a couple years older than me. I'm 44.
yeah,
He was 46.
yeah,
Went to sleep and never woke up.
never woke up.
And did everything the right way, man.
Yeah, that was it.
My mom passed away 2006.
Yeah.
Early. And it's just like when you start figuring all these things out, it's just like life is so finite. You
Yeah.
got to do what you love.
You got to do what you love, man. And I understand what some of you may be thinking. Yeah, but I've got these responsibilities right now. Listen, I or Jesse are not saying to you, wake up tomorrow morning, go quit your job and move along. Create a plan. What is going to be your exit plan, right? What is going to be your exit plan? I always tell comedians that are ready to make their transition, write down the exact number that you need to live on monthly. And I've had comedians show me that paper. For me, it's $2,734. That covers everything I need. For me, it's $3,016. For me, I can get by on $22.97 because I tell them I want the exact penny. The light bill, the gas bill, the rent, give me that exact penny. Make that your goal, that right there. The rest of what you're spending, believe it or not, is your waste. But your living expenses, what's that number? Then that's the number. Did you know? I tell them sometimes, did you know that you can make $2,900 a month at Starbucks? That you can make $2,200 a month driving Uber, right? Make your transition. So if you don't want to go to the 9 to 5, I get it. So slowly make the transition out. The sooner you get ready, the sooner you get used to living on what you need exactly, right? You'll start to understand the value and appreciate the extra. Here's what I mean. If you're supposed to live on $2,700 a month and this month you made it to $3,700, you value that $1,000. And what you value more is how you got it. And how'd you get it? Doing what?
What you love.
What you love. That's it. And then all of a sudden that 1,000 becomes 2,000. And then that 2,000 becomes 3,000. And now you're floating. And then you're thinking to yourself, I no longer have to go to 125 South Clark and take an elevator up and clock out at 5:45 because that's what time you go to home. And you gotta leave your cubicle at 12:15, but be back by 1 o'clock.
Man.
That's all over with. You're not going to do that overnight. We all understand that. Transition. Plan out your transition. How am I getting out of here? What's my escape plan? What's my exit plan? And do it little by little. And then one day, all of a sudden, you're not there anymore and you are flourishing because you are living in what you want to do.
Yeah. For sure.
You're living in what you want to do. My parents, did not have that option,
For sure.
right? And most of our parents did not have that option. It was not, but we do have that option.
Yeah.
Most of us do. We do. And, there are people now, I think a little differently. When I run into a girl or a guy and he tells me, yeah, I was doing this, but now I'm doing that. And then I was doing this, but now I'm doing that. Some people may say it's a little unstable. But I'm like, I don't know. This guy's 47 years old. He's been a pilot, a teacher. He's been a chef, right? I don't know that that's unstable.
He's the most interesting person in the world.
He's the most interesting person in the world. One thing he hasn't been is unemployed.
Yeah.
So I know a girl that became an attorney and did it for 4 or 5 years and went back and became a forensic psychologist. And people have said she wasted all that time and money in law school. Wasted? Do you think there's like they siphon the knowledge out of her head? That's not wasted.
Yeah.
She's happy.
Yeah. And that's what it's about.
That's what it's
happy.
about. Ellie Castro is a comedian who used to be an attorney. And I'm talking about an attorney that passed the bar in Florida, New York, and Illinois, and passed the hardest bar, which was the New York State bar. Okay? And then woke up one day and said, I'm good. I'm a comedian now.
Yeah.
And never looked back. Never looked back. So something out there you want to do, something out there that's just calling your name, put your eyes on the prize, figure out what your plan is going to be. Don't let the anxiety of what we understand to be normal freak you out.
Yeah.
You know, if you're living in, some people are living in an apartment that's not necessarily, necessary, or they've got 2 cars or whatever the case may be, I remember telling a guy one time, and I'll never forget this, and I say to him, man, you fly first class all the time? Yeah. Does your company pay for this? No. I go, man, it's kind of cool, because I've only been in first class going straight. He goes, oh, I fly first class a lot. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, you know why? I know. I don't have an SUV. I don't have 10 flat screens. I live exactly, I like to travel, and when I travel long distance, and when I travel long distance, I like to sit in the first class.
Quality.
So I work for what I enjoy, and this is what I enjoy.
Yeah.
And so you got to look at that the same way. What can I cut out of my life that puts me closer to my dream?
And what would you say you're up to, and like what would you invite people to? Any future shows or anything that you have coming up?
Yeah. So I have spent a lot of time doing shows, and I am concentrating this year on doing things that I've really always wanted to do. So I'm a big fan of bolero.
Okay.
Bolero music.
Like Mexican bolero music.
Mexican bolero, Puerto Rican bolero, Cuban bolero, la música romántica, bolero.
Oh, yeah.
The trios,
grandma's
the trios,
favorite.
yeah,
yo.
the trios, the requintos, the Cuban tres, the Puerto Rican cuatro. And so I'm doing something called the Bolero Project that I'm working on now.
Okay.
I'm working on a couple of other plays, and a lot of people don't know the difference between an executive producer and a producer. An executive producer is the guy that puts up the money and the concept. And a producer is the guy who executes the concept for somebody else. So I'm acting in both roles now, and I'm digging that. And that's the beauty about being a producer is if you wake up with an idea and you think the audience will like it, then you put it on paper, you put it on stage, and off you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So got some stuff coming up. You can visit my website, MikeyOShow.com. You'll see some stuff on there. And
how can they reach out to you if they have any questions?
Yeah, man. If they want to talk, listen, first of all, I answer all my emails, mike@MikeyOShow.com. I'm at Mikey O Show on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as a fan page and as an individual. But here's what I want you to know, because I love doing this. If you're out there and you've got an idea and you're just trying to figure out how to get it off the ground, there's not a month that doesn't go by that I don't have coffee with somebody and lead them that way.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you. I want to help you. I want to help you see your vision.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for making it to the 500 and Growing podcast. Like, we really appreciate all the nuggets that you gave.
Honored to be
audience.
here, man.
Yeah, man. We really appreciate the wisdom. We formed this podcast so that people have the courage to jump off and do what you're saying, transition into their higher self or their to pursue their dreams, right?
Yeah.
And so we really appreciate your story.
Thank you, man.
Thank you very much for making it to the 500 and Growing podcast.
I am honored. Do I get a gift or something, or can I take something from here?
Everything but that CD that I was telling you about, man.
That one CD that's up there?
Stakes is high.
Man, I feel like I don't know. I'm not sure stealing is. I feel like I deserve a gift or something. Thank you very much.
You'll get a round of applause.
Oh, let me hear it.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Thank you, Mikey, for
Thank you.
making it to the 500 and Growing. We appreciate it. And you can always reach out to Mikey and ask him questions like he's saying. And please follow us at 500 and Growing Podcast on Instagram. And then you can go to the website, 500andgrowing.com. And this is produced by Where You At Productions. And definitely you can go to the website, whereyouatproductions.com. Thank you.
Gracias.
500 and growing.
Podcast.
Visit 500andgrowing.com for more creative content.
Ready to set it off and on, cause I see you. Correcting all that is wrong, cause I see you. Dedicated to your craft, read and study the math. Making goals and taking a stand. Original, so you trailblaze a path. In tune with your inner master plan.
Thank you very much for listening to the 500 and Growing Podcast. Remember that we have incredible guests that have already featured in episodes in the past. So please go back into the archives and listen to their inspirational stories. And then remember that we have incredible guests lined up for the future. So please follow on Instagram at 500 and Growing Podcast. Remember to follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the major podcast platforms. You can also check out 500andgrowing.com for more creative content.